Mic check.
Money check. Mindset check.
This is Mic'd Up Money Reloaded.
Where entrepreneurs talk money,
Strategy, systems,
and execution. No fake hustle, no empty flexing, just real business talk that gets you right.
Mic'd Up Money
Reloaded, talk that strategy, show it.
Systems moving, profit growing.
Real entrepreneurs already know it.
No fake value,
Better own it. Price meets pain when the bridge is built. Execution turns the vision golden. If the plan is weak, the pressure gets felt.
mic check.
Money check.
Mindset check.
This ain't just motivation. This is business correction. This ain't just conversation. This is money direction.
You want profit, build the model. You want growth, fix the flow. You want increase, check the numbers.
What you don't know can stop the show.
Mic'd Up Money
Reloaded, talk that strategy. Show it.
Systems moving, profit growing.
Real entrepreneurs already know it.
Hey.
No fake hustle,
No.
no empty flexing, no more guessing, no more
Stressing, money, strategy, systems, execution.
Reload the vision, rebuild the plan. Price the value, know where you stand.
Mic'd Up Money
Reloaded.
Bumping 96.3 FM. iHeartRadio, YouTube.
Where entrepreneurs talk money,
Strategy, systems.
and execution.
Stop just listening.
Start applying.
Mic'd Up Money.
Reloaded.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Disclaimer: this content is for educational and strategic planning purposes only. It is not legal, accounting, audit, tax, grant compliance, or financial advice. Nonprofits, churches, ministries, and board members should consult qualified attorneys, CPAs, auditors, grant compliance professionals, and other advisors before making decisions involving governance, grants, restricted funds, employment, contracts, tax-exempt status, or allegations of fraud or misconduct. Welcome to Mic'd Up Money Reloaded, where entrepreneurs talk money, strategy, systems, and execution. I'm Efrem Keith Simmons, and today we are dealing with a subject that some people whisper about, some people complain about privately, and some people avoid because they do not want to offend the nonprofit world. But we are going to say it plainly. Today's episode is called The Nonprofit Problem, Help or Hustle, because we have to ask the real question. Are some nonprofits truly helping people, or have they learned how to hustle hardship? Are they solving problems or professionally describing problems every grant cycle? Are they creating measurable impact or just creating emotional language that sounds good in a proposal? Are they serving the community or serving the funder? Are they building people or building budgets around people who never actually get better? Now, let me be clear before somebody starts clutching their board packet. I believe in nonprofit work. I have a nonprofit. I believe in mission. I believe in community service. I believe in ministry. I believe in helping people. I believe in grassroots leaders who see pain and decide to do something about it. But I also believe this: a good heart does not excuse bad structure. A strong mission statement does not excuse weak money management. A passionate executive director does not excuse poor execution. A board title does not equal board oversight. A grant award does not mean the organization is ready. And a nonprofit is not automatically noble just because it says community in the mission statement. Passion is not a program. A flyer is not a strategy. A grant application is not a business model. I am not attacking the mission. I am auditing the model. Segment 1, Help or Hustle. Let's begin with the title, Help or Hustle. There are two spirits operating in the nonprofit world. One spirit is service. That spirit says there is a real problem, real people are hurting, there is a real gap, and we are going to organize people, money, systems, partnerships, leadership, and accountability to help solve it. But there is another spirit. That spirit uses pain as positioning. It says, let's find a hot issue, write a strong proposal, use the right community language, get some pictures, get letters of support, and say underserved, marginalized, equity, empowerment, and transformation enough times that the funder feels warm inside. But when you ask, what changed? The room gets quiet. When you ask who was actually served, they start talking about attendance. When you ask what outcomes were produced, they start talking about activities. When you ask where did the money go, they start talking about how hard the work is. No, we are not doing that today. Activity is not impact. Attendance is not transformation. A packed room is not proof of progress. A press release is not proof of performance. A grant report is not automatically the same thing as community change. Some organizations are operating in mission theater. That is when the nonprofit looks active, sounds passionate, uses all the right buzzwords, but has no measurable structure underneath. No clear model, no clear outcome, no clear cost per participant, no clear financial controls, no clear partnership agreements, no clear board accountability, no clear project management, and no clear proof that the people being served are actually better off. That is not impact. That is nonprofit fog machine work. A lot of smoke, a lot of lights, but nobody can see the road. The community does not need more nonprofits that sound good. It needs nonprofits that work. Stop reporting contact like it is change. Segment 2. Accountability is protection, not punishment. One of the biggest nonprofit problems is lack of accountability. Let us correct the language. Accountability is not punishment. Accountability is protection. It protects the mission. It protects the people being served. It protects donors. It protects grantors. It protects the board. It protects the executive director. It protects volunteers. It protects the organization's reputation. But too many nonprofits want money without accountability. They want grants without reporting discipline. They want donors without transparency. They want board members without board oversight. They want volunteers without structure. They want partnerships without written agreements. They want community trust without financial controls. That is backwards. A nonprofit without accountability becomes a place where good intentions hide bad execution. Sometimes bad intentions hide behind good language. When nobody owns the outcome, everybody can blame somebody else. The executive director blames the board blames the executive director, the grant writer blames the funder blames the nonprofit, the staff blames the volunteers blame poor communication. Meanwhile, the people who were supposed to be served are sitting there wondering, was this ever really about us? Every nonprofit needs accountability around 5 areas: mission, money, management, measurement, and movement. Mission asks, are we doing what we said we exist to do? Money asks, are resources being used properly? Management asks, are people, programs, deadlines, and responsibilities being led? Measurement asks, what changed because we showed up? Movement asks, are people actually moving from crisis to stability, from confusion to clarity, from need to capacity? If those 5 areas are not being reviewed, you are not managing a nonprofit. You are hoping a nonprofit works. Hope is not a control system. Trust without controls is how money grows legs and mission loses shoes. If the mission has no measurements, leadership has no mirror. Segment 3. Nonprofit does not mean no business model. Some people hear the word nonprofit and think it means the organization does not need a business model. Wrong. Nonprofit does not mean no revenue. Nonprofit does not mean no financial discipline. Nonprofit does not mean no cash flow planning. Nonprofit does not mean no budget. Nonprofit does not mean no sustainability. Nonprofit means the organization does not distribute profit to owners or shareholders, but the organization still has to survive. It still has to pay bills. It still has to cover program costs. It still has to manage payroll or contractors. It still has to track restricted funds. It still has to protect records. It still has to operate. You need to know what it costs to serve one person, run one workshop, deliver one cohort, manage one grant, provide transportation, meals, materials, staffing, technology, insurance, space, follow-up, and reporting. And here is the big one. What does it cost when you overpromise and under budget? Because that is where nonprofits get hurt. They apply for the grant like they are fully staffed, then receive the grant and realize they need staff. They write the proposal like the partnerships are already in place, then realize the partners were only interested. They budget like volunteers will do everything, then realize volunteers have jobs, families, limits, and no obligation to be available on demand. They promise outcomes like they have a data system, then realize tracking outcomes takes time, software, follow-up, discipline, and someone who actually knows what they are doing. Tax exempt does not mean math exempt. If the math ain't mathin', the mission will start limping. Segment 4, Executive Director, Board, and Advisory Accountability. Now let us talk about the Executive Director, the Board, and the Advisory Board. Some nonprofit leaders are deeply committed. They carry the organization on their back. They may be underpaid, overworked, emotionally drained, and trying to keep the mission alive. That is real. But it is also real that some executive directors are not being held accountable. When an executive director is not held accountable, the organization can become personality driven instead of mission driven. The executive director is not just the face of the organization. The executive director is responsible for turning mission into execution. That means the ED should be evaluated on mission alignment, vision execution, program outcomes, financial stewardship, grant compliance, staff and contractor coordination, board communication, partnership management, conflict of interest disclosure, strategic plan implementation, and community impact. That is not being mean. That is governance. The mission cannot just live on the website. The vision cannot just sound good at the fundraiser. The outcomes cannot just appear in the grant application. Somebody has to make sure the organization is actually doing what it said it exists to do. If the ED cannot execute the plan, manage the money, coordinate the people, protect the mission, and report the outcomes, then the board cannot just clap and call it leadership. That is unchecked authority. Now, the board must also understand its role. A board seat is not status, it is responsibility. The board must govern, guide, protect, oversee, ask hard questions, review financials, evaluate leadership, and make sure the organization does not drift. And advisory boards? Some are powerful. They bring expertise, open doors, review strategy, challenge assumptions, and protect mission. But some are name collections. Somebody from banking, somebody from education, somebody from church, somebody from business, somebody with a title. But do they advise, attend, review, connect, challenge, help, or protect? If their names, titles, expertise, and relationships are being used to strengthen credibility, then they should provide real value. An executive director should not be evaluated by charm. They should be evaluated by mission movement, financial stewardship, execution, and outcomes. A board seat is not a photo opportunity. It is a fiduciary responsibility. If your advisory board only exists in the grant narrative, it is not advising. It is advertising. Advisory board members should not be rented credibility. They should be activated capacity. Segment 5. When the board becomes unpaid staff. Here is a point many small nonprofits need to hear. Some nonprofits treat the board like unpaid staff, especially when the only person getting paid is the executive director. Board members can volunteer, open doors, review strategy, raise funds, advise, connect resources, and support the mission. But the board is not supposed to become the unpaid labor force that makes up for an undeveloped staffing model. When the executive director is paid, but the board is expected to handle operations, fundraising, administration, program management, event planning, marketing, transportation, volunteer coordination, grant support, and crisis response for free, the organization has confused governance with staffing. Who is supervising whom? Who is accountable for execution? Who owns the program? Who manages the budget? Who follows up on tasks? Who reports outcomes? Who evaluates whether the executive director is performing? If the board is doing the work while the executive director controls the money, reporting, relationships, and public image, something is off. That is not a clean operating model. That is mission confusion. Some executive directors want board members to work like staff but stay quiet like spectators. They want help without oversight, labor without questions, connections without accountability, fundraising without financial transparency, and board credibility without board authority. No, that is backwards. A nonprofit that can only afford to pay the executive director but depends on unpaid board labor for everything else does not have a complete business model yet. That does not mean the mission is bad. It means the model is immature. The board is not unpaid staff with a nicer title. A board should not be doing the executive director's job while also being told not to question the executive director. If you want the board's labor, access, and reputation, you must also accept the board's oversight. If the board is doing staff work, the budget is telling a truth the mission statement is hiding. Segment 6. Grants, grant writers, and mission money grift. A good grant writer is valuable. A good grant writer helps an organization tell the truth strategically. They organize the need, the program, the budget, the outcomes, the timeline, and the story. But a bad grant writer can set a nonprofit up for failure. Some grant writers will apply for anything. They inflate capacity, overstate partnerships, create unrealistic budgets, and promise outcomes the organization cannot deliver. They write as though the nonprofit already has staff, systems, data, partnerships, facilities, and experience that it does not actually have. Then the grant gets awarded and everybody celebrates. But after the celebration comes execution. Now the nonprofit has to do what the grant writer said it could do. Now the nonprofit has to report what it promised, track costs, prove outcomes, document time, activities, participants, payments, deliverables, and compliance. If the organization was not ready, the grant becomes a burden. A grant is not free money. A grant is restricted money with expectations attached. If you are not ready to manage the expectations, you are not ready for the money. This connects to mission money grift. That happens when the nonprofit stops serving the mission and starts serving whatever money is available. If the funder says workforce, they become workforce. If the funder says youth, they become youth. If the funder says mental health, they become mental health. If the funder says violence prevention, they become violence prevention. Organizations can grow and adapt, but if every grant cycle changes your identity, you are not strategic. You are funder fragmented. You are letting the money define the mission. And when the money defines the mission, the people become props. The grant writer may get paid for the promise, but the nonprofit has to survive the performance. A grant writer should not be writing checks that your operations cannot cash. Every grant opportunity is not a blessing. Some grants are stress with a budget code. When the money becomes the mission, the people become props. Money that pulls you away from mission is not funding. It is a detour. Segment 7. When the hustle requires the problem to stay unsolved. Now let us talk about the darkest version of the nonprofit hustle. This is when the organization is not truly built to solve the problem. It is not built to develop people. It is not built to develop infrastructure. It is not built to create measurable change. It is built to manage the problem just enough to keep funding attached to it. That is dangerous. Some organizations do not want the problem solved. They want the problem funded. They do not want people fully developed. They want people continuously documented. They do not want the community transformed. They want the community described. They do not want infrastructure strong enough to reduce dependency. They want dependency strong enough to justify another grant cycle. That is when mission becomes a maintenance contract for misery. Now, not every problem can be solved quickly. Poverty, violence, addiction, unemployment, family instability, education gaps, and neighborhood decline are complex. Some problems require long-term service, long-term support, and repeated intervention. But long-term work should still produce movement. People should be getting stronger. Families should be gaining stability. Participants should be building skills. Systems should be improving. Community capacity should be increasing. Partnerships should be maturing. The organization should be able to say, here is what changed because we showed up. This is where behavioral economics matters. Organizations respond to incentives. If money comes only when the problem looks severe, some organizations learn to prove severity instead of proving progress. If funders reward emotional stories more than measurable development, nonprofits learn to package pain. If grants pay for activities but not infrastructure, organizations keep doing events while the deeper system stays weak. A serious nonprofit should show 3 things: problem reduction, people development, and infrastructure development. If the work does not reduce the problem, develop people, or build infrastructure, what exactly is being funded? Some nonprofits are not solving the problem. They are leasing the problem back to the funder every year. A nonprofit should not need people to stay broken in order for the budget to stay whole. If the crisis never gets smaller, but the budget keeps getting bigger, the board needs to ask harder questions. When funding rewards the appearance of need more than the evidence of progress, the hustle becomes preserving the need. If your organization cannot survive people getting better, then your model is built on dependency, not impact. Segment 8, Public Record Memphis Lessons. Somebody may be listening and thinking, Efrem, are you being too hard on nonprofits? No. I am being honest because the headlines keep proving the point. I am not bringing up public examples for gossip. I am bringing them up because public trust is expensive to earn and easy to lose. Here in the Memphis area, there have been nonprofit-related cases where the issue was weak controls, weak oversight, poor documentation, grant misuse, or leadership operating without enough accountability. One major example is Lifeline to Success, a Memphis-based nonprofit providing re-entry services. The Tennessee Comptroller reported that an investigation led to indictments after investigators determined DeAndre Brown and Vanessa Brown misappropriated at least $626,858.63 from the organization. Because indictments are allegations until resolved legally, use careful wording, but the governance lesson is loud. Mission money must not be handled like personal money. Another example involved Red Robin's Academy of Learning and Giving Youth a Chance. The Tennessee Comptroller reported fraudulent actions involving the summer food service program and said the Memphis area nonprofits wrongfully obtained more than $37,000 in federal reimbursements. There was also a Shelby County case involving Broderick Webster, where the Tennessee Comptroller reported an indictment connected to an alleged double-dipping scheme involving overlapping work for Persevere in Memphis and Eagles Nest services. More recently, Action News 5 reported that a City of Memphis investigation found incoming Shelby County Commissioner LaShanta Rudd misused more than $10,000 in city grant money connected to Serving in Christ Outreach, a nonprofit she founded. Since that reporting is based on a confidential memo obtained by the station, presented as reported by Action News 5, not as a final court finding. So here's the lesson. Memphis does not need to throw away nonprofit work. Memphis needs stronger nonprofit accountability. Every time mission money is misused, it damages public trust, makes funders more suspicious, makes donors more hesitant, makes legitimate grassroots groups work harder to prove they are clean, and gives ammunition to critics who already think community work is a hustle. When one nonprofit plays games with the money, 10 honest nonprofits have to explain why they are different. Misused mission money does not just steal dollars, it steals trust. Nonprofit money is not personal money with a mission statement attached. Segment 9, Small Nonprofits, Audit Cost, and the Receipt Rule. Now let us be fair to smaller nonprofits. Everybody keeps saying, get an audit. That sounds good, but many small nonprofits cannot afford a full external audit every year. Depending on size and complexity, an independent audit can cost thousands of dollars. For a small, grassroots nonprofit operating on a thin budget, that can feel like choosing between serving people and paying for paperwork. But not being able to afford an audit does not mean you cannot afford accountability. Receipts still tell the story. Bank statements still tell the story. Canceled checks still tell the story. Debit card transactions still tell the story. Missing receipts tell the story too. Sometimes missing receipts tell the loudest story in the room. Let us stop acting like basic financial discipline requires a Fortune 500 accounting department. A small nonprofit can still have a receipt file, bank reconciliation, check register, board-reviewed budget, written reimbursement policy, debit card usage policy, grant expense folder, monthly financial report, simple approval process, conflict of interest disclosure form, and a clear rule that no one gets reimbursed without documentation. That is not fancy. That is stewardship. If you cannot produce receipts for how mission money was spent, you do not only have a financial problem, you have a credibility problem. Once money touches the mission, documentation has to touch the money. A small nonprofit may not need a full external audit every year, but it does need an accountability ladder. Basic records, monthly reconciliations, board review, outside bookkeeping review, finance committee review, compilation or review, and eventually a full audit when funding, risk, or funder requirements demand it. The receipt rule is simple. For every dollar spent, answer 4 questions. What was purchased? Who approved it? How did it support the mission or grant purpose? Where is the receipt or supporting documentation? An audit may be expensive, but a receipt folder is not. Receipts do not just prove spending. Receipts protect trust. If the mission is worth funding, the money is worth tracking. No receipt, no story, no story, no trust. Segment 10. Family deals, no bid contracts, and inferior work. Another nonprofit problem that quietly destroys trust is family deals kept secret from everybody except the founder. This is when the founder, executive director, or key leader gives paid work, contracts, vendor opportunities, reimbursements, consulting fees, rent arrangements, transportation deals, catering deals, marketing work, bookkeeping, grant support, or program labor to a family member or close friend without disclosing it to the board, documenting it properly, getting competitive pricing, or allowing normal review. Family can work with a nonprofit. Sometimes family members are skilled, available, trusted, and can provide legitimate services. The issue is whether the deal was disclosed, reviewed, approved, documented, priced fairly, and protected from private benefit. Once mission money starts flowing through family relationships in secret, the organization has entered a danger zone. Trust does not replace governance. Family does not replace documentation. Loyalty does not replace board approval. Founder authority does not replace accountability. If a family member is being paid, the board should know. If a related business is being hired, the board should know. If a spouse, child, sibling, cousin, close friend, or related entity is benefiting from nonprofit funds, the board should know before the deal is approved. Now go one layer deeper. The problem is not only family deals. The deeper problem is insider deals that bypass the normal process and still produce inferior work. That is a double failure. First, process failure. No fair review, no comparison, no bid, no scope, no board approval, no conflict disclosure, and no independent evaluation. Second, performance failure. Late, sloppy, incomplete, overpriced, undocumented, or below professional standard work. When both happen together, the mission gets robbed twice. The organization loses money, and the people who were supposed to be served lose quality. Small nonprofits do not need a complicated government-style bidding process for every small purchase, but they need basic rules: receipts and documented mission purpose for small purchases, approval and invoice for medium purchases, quotes for larger purchases, and disclosure, independent review, fair price comparison, board approval, minutes, proof of work, and documentation for related party deals. Family can serve the mission, but family cannot secretly become the mission's payroll plan. Trust me is not an internal control. A no-bid deal with inferior work is not stewardship. That is favoritism wearing a mission badge. The mission should not have to overpay for underperformance just because somebody is connected to the founder. No bid, no scope, no proof, no peace. Family deals do not have to be forbidden, but they do have to be exposed to daylight. Segment 11. Trauma story extraction, donor feel-good, and collaboration theater. Now we need to discuss another kind of extraction, trauma story extraction. Some nonprofits use participant pain stories for grants, videos, fundraisers, and social media. Storytelling can be powerful and appropriate when it is ethical, permission-based, dignified, and connected to real impact. But when an organization keeps using people's trauma stories to raise money, while those same people do not move towards stability, healing, income, leadership, or ownership, that is not storytelling. That is extraction. The person whose pain helps raise the money should not remain invisible when impact is discussed. Then there is the donor feel-good economy. Some donors are buying the feeling of helping instead of funding the proof of change. They want the emotional relief of saying, I gave, therefore I helped. But giving is not the same as impact. Funding activity is not the same as funding transformation. And then we have collaboration theater. Organizations hold meetings, coalitions, panels, listening sessions, and photo opportunities. Everybody talks about partnership. Everybody takes the picture. Everybody thanks the community. But nothing changes. A coalition that only meets, talks, and takes pictures is not collaboration. It is calendar clutter. If the meeting produces no decision, no dollars, no duties, and no deadlines, it was not collaboration. It was a networking event with snacks. Do not turn somebody's pain into your marketing department. If their story raises the money, their life should see the impact. Some donors are buying the feeling of helping instead of funding the proof of change. If the meeting produces no decision, no dollars, no duties, and no deadlines, it was not collaboration. Segment 12. Big Bank Takes Little Bank. Now, let us talk about something small nonprofits know but often do not say out loud. Sometimes big nonprofits do not partner with small nonprofits. They harvest them. They come for the small nonprofits' community trust, neighborhood access, program ideas, cultural credibility, local relationships, and grassroots connection. Then they take the language, write the grant, get the funding, control the budget, and the small nonprofit gets a thank you email and maybe a logo on a flyer. That is not collaboration. That is extraction. That is big bank takes little bank. Large nonprofits can bring real value: grant infrastructure, finance systems, staff capacity, funder relationships, insurance, compliance departments, and reporting experience. Small nonprofits may have community trust, lived experience, agility, local credibility, and access to people the larger organization cannot reach. That should create partnership, but partnership requires protection. No small nonprofit should bring its ideas, relationships, community trust, program design, or unpaid labor to a larger organization without written terms. You need an MOU, scope of work, compensation terms, role clarity, budget participation, data ownership terms, logo and name use approval, referral expectations, public credit language, deliverable ownership, and exit terms. Do not bring your community trust to somebody else's table without a written agreement and a seat at the budget. No scope, no labor. No budget, no partnership. Segment 13, Social Justice, Church Drift, and Political Influence. Now we need to talk about another version of mission drift. This one is sensitive because it happens inside some churches, ministries, and faith-based nonprofits. I call it social justice without biblical submission. The Bible absolutely speaks about justice, mercy, care for the poor, defending the vulnerable, honest weights and measures, protecting widows and orphans, and refusing oppression. So this is not an attack on justice. The issue is when a church or faith-based organization stops letting scripture define justice and starts letting political pressure, social trends, funders, public approval, or influence networks define justice. That is when the mission gets dangerous. The organization may still use biblical language, but the engine underneath is no longer biblical conviction. It is political access, social approval, influence, funding, public image, and trying to stay invited to tables where the terms of admission require silence on biblical truth. A church can start off saying, "We want to help the community." Good. But then the question becomes, are we helping the community according to biblical truth? Or are we reshaping our message so we can fit into political and social circles? Are we serving people with compassion or using suffering people to build influence? Are we speaking truth in love or avoiding truth so we do not lose access? Are we calling people to restoration or affirming anything that keeps grants, followers, invitations, and partnerships flowing? A church that abandons biblical tenets for political influence may still be busy, funded, visible, and praised, but it is no longer being faithful. That is not just mission drift, that is spiritual drift. Biblical justice must bow to scripture, not applause, politics, or funder preferences. When the church trades conviction for influence, it may gain the room and lose the reason it was sent. Influence is useful only when it serves the mission. When influence becomes the mission, compromise becomes the strategy. Compassion without conviction becomes compromise. Justice without truth becomes ideology. Mission without scripture becomes marketing. Segment 14, Turning Passion into Impact. I do not want this episode to only sound like a warning. Somebody is listening saying, "Efrem, I hear you, but I really do care. I really do want to help. I really do see a need. I really do feel called to do something good." We need you. We need sincere people, compassionate people, and people who see what others ignore. But do not turn passion into paperwork too soon. Do not start with a 501c3. Start with clarity. Everybody with compassion does not need to start a nonprofit. Some need to volunteer first. Some need to start a pilot program. Some need to partner with an existing organization. Some need to create a training program. Some need to build a church outreach initiative. Some need to launch a social enterprise. Some need to test the work before forming the organization. Here is the building plan. First, identify the burden. What issue keeps bothering you? Who do you feel called to help? What would you regret not doing something about? Second, define the people you serve. Do not start with, "I want to help everybody." Everybody is not a target audience. Be specific. Third, define the problem in measurable terms. Use this sentence: "The people I serve are struggling with blank, which causes blank. My work helps them move from blank to blank." Fourth, build a minimum viable impact program. Do not chase the big grant first. Start with a small test, a 4-week class, 10 participants, 1 partner location, 1 workshop, 1 outcome report. Track who attended, what changed, what it cost, and what support is still needed. Fifth, build the impact scorecard. Ask, what changed because we showed up? Sixth, know what it costs. If you do not know what impact costs, you will keep begging instead of budgeting. Do not file paperwork before you prove the work. General passion creates general confusion. Specific passion creates strategic direction. Start small enough to execute, but serious enough to measure. Turn your burden into a blueprint, your passion into a process, and your service into measurable impact. Strategic hustling moment. Now it is time for the strategic hustling moment. Before your nonprofit applies for another grant, launches another program, recruits another advisory board member, signs another partnership, hires another family member, or announces another initiative, ask these questions. Is the mission clear? Is the executive director being evaluated against mission, vision, budget, execution, and measurable outcomes? Does the advisory board have real expectations, or are they just names on paper? Are board members receiving accurate financial and program reports? Are outcomes being tracked, reviewed, and used to make decisions? Are grants being pursued based on capacity or desperation? Are partnerships protected by written agreements, scopes of work, and compensation terms? Are family or insider deals disclosed, reviewed, and documented? Was there a bid process or at least a written explanation for no bid selection? Was the work inspected before payment? Can every major expense be explained with a receipt, approval, mission purpose, and supporting documentation? Is the organization serving community needs or chasing funder preferences? Does the funding model require the problem to remain severe? Are participants becoming stronger or simply returning for another service cycle? For faith-based organizations, are we defining justice biblically or politically? Are we changing our message to keep access, funding, or applause? Are vulnerable people being served or being used as proof of relevance? For the person trying to turn passion into impact, have you tested the idea? Have you measured the need? Have you identified the people you serve? Have you built a small pilot? Have you calculated the cost? Have you created a scorecard? Have you protected the mission? Strategic hustling is not grabbing every opportunity. Strategic hustling is knowing which opportunities fit your capacity, protect your credibility, and move your mission forward. Every open door is not your door. Some doors are traps with better lighting. If connection gets the contract and quality gets ignored, the mission is paying for politics. If you are not reducing the problem, developing people, or building infrastructure, you may just be managing activity. Toolkit. Because this is Mic'd Up Money Reloaded, we are not just going to talk about the problem, we are going to give you tools. For this episode, the toolkit is the Nonprofit Problem Toolkit, Help or Hustle Accountability Pack. Inside the toolkit are practical tools: nonprofit accountability, X-ray, mission to money alignment map, grant readiness, reality check, executive director, mission accountability scorecard, advisory board activation grid, board versus staff role clarity map, small nonprofit accountability ladder, receipt rule, worksheet, family and related party deal disclosure checklist, no bid and vendor quality review, big bank takes little bank partnership protector, biblical mission integrity check, status quo funding trap diagnostic, and passion to impact builder. The nonprofit sector does not just need more money, it needs more accountability. It needs executive directors who can execute. It needs boards that govern instead of rubber stamping confusion. It needs advisory boards that actually advise. It needs grant writers who tell the truth. It needs financial systems that protect the mission. It needs receipts. It needs controls. It needs partnerships that do not exploit smaller organizations. It needs churches and faith-based nonprofits that serve people without selling conviction for influence. And it needs people with passion to slow down long enough to build something that actually works. Accountability is not the enemy of mission. Accountability is how mission survives. So before you start the nonprofit, build the plan. Before you chase the grant, test the program. Before you recruit the board, clarify the mission. Before you announce the vision, define the outcome. Before you ask for money, know what impact costs. Before you pay family, disclose the relationship. Before you accept inferior work, remember who the money was supposed to serve. And before you let somebody use your community trust, get the agreement in writing. The goal is not to look like you are helping. The goal is to actually help. This has been Mic'd Up Money Reloaded, where entrepreneurs talk money, strategy, systems, and execution. I'm Efrem Keith Simmons. Listen Saturdays at 8 a.m. on Bumpin', 96.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Do not just chase money. Build the model, protect the mission, execute the work, measure the impact. Remember, mission without accountability becomes marketing. Vision without execution becomes fantasy. Outcomes without evidence become fiction. Turn your burden into a blueprint, your passion into a process, and your service into measurable impact.
Mic'd Up Money Reloaded, talk that strategy, show it. Systems moving, profit grow, and real entrepreneurs already know it. No fake hustle, no empty flexing, no more guessing, no more stressing. Money, strategy, systems, execution. Reload the vision, rebuild the plan, price the value, know where you stand. Mic'd Up Money Reloaded. Bumpin' 96.3 FM, iHeartRadio, YouTube, where entrepreneurs talk money, strategy, systems, and execution. Stop just listening, start applying. Mic'd Up Money Reloaded. Let's get it.